and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. DAP's new leadership lineup comes at a crucial time, not just for the party, but for the unity government it is part of. Now, following last Sunday's Central Executive Committee elections, Gobind Singh Deo is DAP's national chairperson, and Anthony Loke has been re-elected Secretary General, while Lim Guan Eng now transitions into the role of party advisor. But what does this all mean for the party's future direction, and can DAP overcome its factional struggles? Joining me on the show now is Professor Dr. Kian Ming, who is Pro Vice-Chancellor for External Engagement at Taylor's University. He previously served as Deputy Minister of International Trade and Industry and was a two-term DAP Member of Parliament. Kian Ming, thank you so much for being on the show with me today. Exciting times for DAP. You are a party member, but I want to ask you about your past experience with the party and how that shapes your view or your perspective of the outcome of DAP's CEC elections. What does it signal to you about the party's internal dynamics?
Hi, Melissa. Thanks for having me. I promised that I would not say anything about the party campaign before the results were out. But after the results are out, I'm happy to share my thoughts and provide some context. Usually, DAP party elections are quite tame affairs. Because the party tries to keep the internal contestation under wraps and generally not want to make it a very public spectacle. But I think this time was a little bit different in the sense that it was very obvious that there was a very strong call to maintain Lim Guan Eng in the Central Executive Committee. And then at the same time, there was also this wave or this push for a continuation of the renewal of DAP leadership, passing on the reins to the younger generation, to Anthony Loke's generation, and maybe setting the scene for the generation after that as well. So I think both things were on display, and I think the outcome was the best outcome for the party, in the sense that Lim Guan Eng's position was maintained within the CEC, in terms of him getting into the top 30. But there was also the passing on reins of leadership from him as chairman to Gobind, and I think many other younger people also were put into the CEC, including my successor in Bangi, a young lawyer by the name of Sharizan Johan.
Right. Okay, so you were part of DAP during a period that was still very heavily associated with the Lim family's leadership. Yes. So talk to me about now the new leadership. And you mentioned a continuation of the renewal of the party. What does that mean in terms of Gobind and Anthony Loke's leadership or leading the party? How do you see the significance of this leadership transition?
Yeah, so when I was in active politics, when I was a member of parliament, when I was a co-opted member of the CEC, this was during a time when Guan Eng's dominance within the party as Secretary General was very apparent. And it was also a time when Kit Siang's shadow also loomed large in the party, because even though he was transitioning out of the CEC, his influence and his struggles for the party and the nation was still something that was remembered very strongly by the members and by the leaders as well. And I think that time was a time of growth and consolidation for the party, culminating in our formation of the Pakatan Harapan government in 2018. But I think since then, with the passing on of the reins of leadership in 2022 to Anthony Loke, you can see that he has a plan to bring in newer leaders, and at the same time not try to upset the power balance within the older generation, so to speak. That's why I think it was significant that not only that Guan Eng's number of votes fell to number 26, but at the same time you could see that Theresa Kok, who is known as a supporter of Guan Eng, didn't get into the top 30 as well. And I think very astutely, Anthony Loke also managed to convince, this is not an explicit kind of announcement, but I think, behind the scenes, he managed to convince two DAP Old Guard leaders, namely Tan Kok Wai, the MP for Cheras, and Fong Kui Lun, the MP for Bukit Bintang, not to contest for these CEC elections. And that also signals and paved the way for younger people to come in and to be elected into the CEC.
You mentioned also in the beginning that there seems to be a desire from the party members to keep Guan Eng in the CEC. How do you what do you make of the role of the party advisor? What does that historically entail, Kian Ming? How much influence would Guan Eng have as party advisor? How much influence would he have in terms of, DAP's direction and the like?
Yeah, so for context, in the DAP, the Secretary General is the most powerful position, and that is well known among the leaders and the members. The chairman position is one that is supposed to be largely ceremonial. It is understood that it should be taken by a more senior party leader to provide guidance and direction to the party, but not to interfere in the day-to-day operations, and not to usurp definitely the role of the Secretary General. I think Guan Eng, when he was chairman from 2022 until recently, took a bit more of an active role. I think he still wanted to be seen to be fighting certain struggles, and he was also very active, I think, in his home state of Penang, influencing candidates and the kind of lineup for the DAP there. So now that he's transitioned to an advisor role, which is one that is even more ceremonial compared to chairman, I think it would be a good signal to him that his role should be one where he guides the younger generation, and where he plays that statesman role, similar to what his father did before the father left the CEC. Whether or not Guan Eng will do that, I'm not quite sure. Knowing him quite well, he still has that kind of a willingness to voice out his views and to be very combative in public. So I hope that he can take that signal, but I'm not sure whether he will or not.
But I mean, those are some of the qualities that I think some people love about him, that he's outspoken and can be combative and speak out for Chinese rights and non-Malay rights. And there are those who argue that DAP under Anthony Loke is not speaking up enough compared to Guan Eng's time. So how do you respond to those types of comments?
Yeah, I think those comments are valid in the sense that, we do need to make sure that our supporters can see the direction that the party is moving in terms of institutional reform, in terms of the kinds of changes in government policies that will make us a more mature democracy, which entail some of the things you mentioned just now, protection of the rights of the minorities, for example, in different arenas of public policy, whether it's in the economy or whether it's in education or cultural areas. But now that we are in government, and this is the second time around that we are in government, we meaning the DAP, there are modalities and modes where these things need to change. And it is maybe not necessary for somebody of Guan Eng's stature to be the one that's voicing out concerns over certain issues that are important to DAP supporters. It could be the turn of younger leaders within the DAP, maybe some of the younger ones in the youth movement, to voice out these kinds of issues. And even the mode by which they voice out maybe needs to be a bit more different. You can have social media posts through TikTok, through maybe not the conventional ways, but things that are a bit more creative, through different kinds of communication methods in different languages, to highlight, I think, the multiracial and multilingual character and face of the DAP. So although I think Guan Eng's role is important, probably he's done enough in that area, and it's important now, I think, for him to focus more on his possible role as a statesman, and let the others plan the direction and the approach that the party is going to take.
Okay, and what do you understand to be the direction and the approach the party is taking? I mean, we have had Anthony Loke as Sec-Gen for the past few years, another 3 years in his term now. Where do you see the party heading in terms of priorities and long-term direction? Sure.
So I would say that the first term that Anthony Loke was Secretary General from 2022 to 2025 was where he had to be very careful in terms of how he treaded, given the fact that, you have, the senior leaders, people like Guan Eng, Teresa Kok, Tam Kok Wai, whose shadow are still looming large. But now, I think in his second term, and I hope that he can also continue to the third term, which is the maximum limit under the DAP constitution, he will be able to cement his mark and to strengthen the party and to leave a legacy for the future leaders in the DAP. So he's hinted at some of those institutional changes. He's talked about bringing in, a formal policy director, a formal elections director, a formal strategic advisor. All these positions have been named, and all of them, those who have been named, are younger leaders in their late 40s and early 50s. And you can see that this is part and parcel of a generational change that I think he would, try to institutionalize more of. He's talked about wanting to, put in the structure in terms of how candidates are selected. So all these, I think, are institutional changes that he will bring in the next DAP Congress that will take place next year. And hopefully we'll be able to see more and more of these kinds of, good practices that can be put on the table. Maybe one thing that I haven't heard Anthony Loke talk about, which I think is needed for the party, is the issuance or the declaration of some sort of code of conduct. Because you have many, DAP leaders now who are EXCO members, who are deputy ministers, and, more and more we hear about possible, scandals, possible, contracts that are awarded, to different people who may be connected to the party, possible, behavioral issues and things like that. But we've not really seen Anthony come up with some sort of a formal code of conduct framework. The only thing that he said is, yes, we'll be more open to allowing sitting MPs and aduns, to take the datukship, right? But that's not a code of conduct, right?
Okay.
So I think this is one area where, if I had time for coffee with Anthony, this would be one of the things that I would highlight.
Can I ask you, going forward, can DAP heal the rifts within the party? There were two major camps going into the CEC. After the CEC, can there be unity and healing, and what will be the impetus for that?
Yeah, so two responses to that. I think the first response would be that the leaders in the DAP are very practical. After the fighting has stopped, after the elections, it's time to roll up your sleeves and do the work. Do the work meaning preparing for the Sabah elections that's going to happen later this year, preparing for the Sarawak elections that's going to happen next year, and then preparing for the state and finally the general elections that are due by 2027. So my understanding and engagements with the leaders in the DAP, has shown me that that is the kind of practical approach that they will take. So, enemies that were there in the past, even though they may have strong feelings about each other, they will continue to do the work. The second response I have is that I don't think there were two very strong and distinct factions. I think that it was quite clear, and looking at the results of the CEC elections, most of the people who were voted in were of the younger generation. And I would say that most of them are aligned to Anthony Loke, and that is the direction that the party members, the delegates, and of course the leaders themselves want to take moving forward. So I don't think it's an issue of healing. I think the majority will follow Anthony, and those who may not necessarily agree with all of the decisions that were made by Anthony would naturally also fall in line, including, I think, Lim Guan Eng.
Kian Ming, thank you so much for giving us a glimpse or some insight into the party dynamics. I appreciate your time. That's Professor Dr. Ong Kian Ming, Pro Vice-Chancellor for External Engagement at Taylor's University. We're going to take a quick break here and consider this. We'll be back with more. Stay tuned. Hi, welcome back to Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris. Let's continue our discussion about the future of DAP. This following the results of last Sunday's Central Executive Committee elections. Joining us now is James Chin, who is a professor of Asian Studies at University of Tasmania in Australia. James, welcome to the show. Thank you for being with us today. What did you make of the outcome of DAP's CEC elections?
So I think it was a really, really important party elections for the very simple reasons that the results will decide the direction of DAP for at least the two next general elections, so for the next decade. So I think by and large, if we speak to both DAP and non-DAP members, this was the very, very best results. The DAP has substantially moved on to the third generation. If you can look at the leadership that was elected, the top 30, most of them came to DAP after 2008 and 2018. So these are relatively young leaders, but at the same time, they managed to elect Lim Guan Eng from the older group. So I think it's really, really good. The young people are propelling DAP to a different direction, while they retain Lim Guan Eng as still a member of the top decision-making body, the CEC.
Right. So we have Guan Eng now transitioning to a party advisor. Do you think this marks the end of the Lim family's dominance in DAP, or is their influence still very deeply entrenched?
So it depends on what sort of influence you're talking about. If you talk about in terms of branding, I don't think you can write the political history of the DAP without mentioning the Lim family, both Guan Eng and his father. I think the way to understand the DAP is that the DAP is unusual in the sense that this is a party that has its roots from the PAP from Singapore, right? So basically from 65 up to 70, 71, it was basically a period of transition from a Singapore-based party to a Malayan-based party. From 70 all the way up to 2018, it was mainly the opposition party, mainly representing the voices of the non-Malays, principally the Chinese and sections of the Indian community. And from 2018 onwards, it was seen as moving into the mainstream after capturing the federal government. So you can see that in every phase of this, right, the Lim family really play a very important role, and you have to give credit where it's due. So during the period of the strongman era under Mahathir, right, the DAP was under tremendous pressure. In fact, there was one or two instances where the DAP nearly broke. As you know, both the father and son spent some time under the ISA, all that sort of thing. So I think after 2018, the younger people who moved in the DAP think that it's time to change the direction of DAP, to bring the DAP to 21st century. The sort of politics that was being played by Lim family, that was required during the strongman era, but perhaps we need to change or modify our direction as DAP become a mainstream party. You cannot say the DAP is out in the wilderness anymore. So basically from 2008 onwards, when they won Penang, took over Penang, and 2018 when they became part of the federal government, they're very much a mainstream party now. So under a mainstream party, I think, and also the fact that we are in the 21st century, I think there was a general feeling among the big group of people who went in after 2008 that the party need to change direction and the party need to go more mainstream. So what do I mean by going more mainstream? So more mainstream essentially means that the DAP has to change to a new type of politics. They can't forever be sort of, like the voice of the opposition. In the old days, the Chinese used to describe the DAP as the party that always bark, make noise when something is wrong in public. That is no longer possible because you're part of the decision-making process, right? You're the government. So what are you complaining about? If you want to complain, you might as well complain inside the government, do something. The other thing is that it is quite clear due to demographic changes in the last 30 years, the Chinese population in actual numbers is getting smaller and smaller, and that the so-called urban Chinese seats, there's really got to get less and less in the coming years because, as you know, right, under the urbanization thing that's happened in Malaysia, the Malays are all moving to the urban areas, the Indians are moving to the urban area. So the number of Chinese seats are actually getting less and less. And if you look at the DAP profile after 2018, essentially all the Chinese voted for the DAP. So that's why the DAP managed to hold on to 40 seats. So there's no way for the DAP to expand anymore because you sort of, for lack of a better word, you sapu all the Chinese seats already. So where are you going to go, right? You have to expand wider. And this goes back to the original foundation, the philosophical foundation of the DAP, which is they want to make Malaysia for all Malaysians. So in order to break out of this mold, you have to reach out to the non-Malay population, and sorry, to the Malay population and the non-Chinese population, principally the Indians, the Malays, plus the natives of East Malaysia.
Okay.
So this new environment, the DAP has no choice but to change itself and move on to the third generation.
Okay. So help me understand this. Anthony Loke has seemed to be a leader who is a lot more diplomatic compared to Guan Eng, who was a very strong critic of UMNO and would be very vocal standing up for minority rights. How do you think DAP can do this under the leadership of Anthony Loke now, expanding its reach without alienating its core base? Because one of the main criticisms leveled to Anthony Loke is that he has not spoken out enough, or not been vocal enough or strong enough in terms of speaking out for minority rights.
So I think you need to dissect that question at two levels. One, you need to look at the personalities. Guan Eng has always been that sort of fighter personality. Some people find him very difficult, perhaps a bit abrasive. So I don't think he's going to change his personality. After so many years, that style of politics is sort of his personality. I don't think it's possible to change. Anthony Loke, I think, has a different way of politics. He believes in coming across not so strongly. And of course, in terms of speaking the Malay language, Anthony Loke is a far more natural speaker, and I think the Malay like it. But what you mentioned, the second part, is that why are people like Anthony not speaking out as strongly as Guan Eng? This goes back to what I said earlier. They're part of the mainstream now. They're part of the government. You can't be complaining about your own government all the time, and especially if you have a seat on the cabinet table. If you got a problem, bring out the cabinet. Why go outside and complain, right? I think the other thing is that the recent histories tells the DAP that they have to be very careful. So what happened was that after the first Pakatan Harapan government fell apart, there was a sort of reflection among many people inside the DAP. I think the conclusion they had was that they made a lot of mistakes in the first term, and that they should not repeat the same mistakes. One of the mistakes they made was that they came across too strongly. So that allows the opposition to say that this is a DAP-controlled government. Most people don't realize that the 2018 government was truly revolutionary. I'll just give you an example. Most people don't realize that the Minister of Finance post is one of the most important posts of government, and it was given to Lim Guan Eng. The last time a non-Malay, not even a Chinese, a non-Malay sat in the Ministry of Finance post was in the 1970s. Maybe you were not even born yet. So that's how long the period is. And you know, right, after that, immediately the opposition complained that, wow, the Chinese are controlling government because they're controlling the Ministry of Finance. So it was a really, really, in some ways, a really revolutionary government in trying to reset Malaysia. But that didn't work, and that created a lot of ammunition for the opposition, especially the Malay Islamic groups, saying that the DAP was running the government, and that helped to pull down the government. Not the only factor, but an important factor. So the DAP this time, if you look at it after they went back into government this time, right, they take a more soft approach. What I don't like about this current approach is that UNRWA doesn't seem to understand that you can still bring changes without playing the old Barisan playbook. As you know, right, the old Barisan playbook is that all the important positions must be given to UMNO, and the Chinese will be given the less important position. So one of the things under the old Barisan model was that the most senior Chinese leader is always given the Ministry of Transport. You can see, right? Anthony Loke given the Ministry of Transport. All the FCA ministers, I can guarantee you, all the FCA leaders were all Minister of Transport, from Lilium, everybody under the sun. And Ministry of Transport, I'm not saying it's not an important ministry, but I'm just saying it's not a core ministry. It's not a core ministry in a sense that it's very easy to carve out transport to other ministries. You don't really need that. It's not like a core ministry like foreign affairs or defense. You can't carve it up, right? No other ministry can look after foreign affairs. It has to be a standalone one. So in that sense, I think the DAP realized that where they are, they really cannot assert themselves in public. But that doesn't mean they don't speak quietly if there's a problem with people like UNRWA or bring up to the cabinet table. My understanding is that they do bring up issues to the cabinet table. It's just that they don't go out and tell everybody else that, we've been pushing for this, we've been pushing for that. I think with the DAP and UNRWA, people also don't forget that we are right at the 2.5 point mark of the administration now.
Yes.
So now on to the next GE, right? It's all about electioning now. So
Okay,
very short frame.
Can I just quickly jump in here? We've got a couple minutes left, and I do want to ask you, you brought up an excellent point. This party leadership, this configuration is going to lead the DAP into the next general election. What is it that they need to do within this next 2.5 hours for the party to thrive?
Right. So what they need to do, unfortunately, has to be done by Anwar, most of the things. The first thing is that they got to get economy right. At the end of the day, right, for the non-Malay population, the most important thing is whether the economy will be doing well. And this is also true for the Malay economy. People are happy if they got money in their pocket, they can go out and makan, they can do a short holiday or whatever. But at the end of the day, they got to get economy right. Secondly, the DAP has to be serious about this new direction. One of the important things that happened this time was that 2 Malay candidates were elected. Not through appointment, elected into the CEC, right? Which means that if they want to expand the DAP wider than the Chinese community, they have to be serious about giving young, credible Malay candidates in winnable seats. Don't just put them in seats where just to fly the DAP flag without a real chance. So they really have to do that. And thirdly, the DAP will really have to, change the configuration of their party structure. Right now, the party structure is still too, too old-fashioned. So one of the things Anthony Loke talked about in his major speech, he wants to make the party system a bit more transparent and a more rational decision-making process. I think all these are very important. It's very, very important for this to happen because for the non-Chinese, there's no way I'm going to join a party if the thing is not transparent. Why should I, right? Because I can join UMNO or PAS where the decision is never transparent anyway. So why should I bother, joining a Chinese-based party where it's also very opaque. So they really have to, whether they like it or not, they really have to do something about their non-Chinese members. The other thing is that I don't know why people keep still thinking that the Indians form a core group in DAP. In fact, it's no longer true. The bulk of the Indian community now actually supporting PKR. So they have to cover their Indian votes, and also they must expand into Malay areas. This, of course, that they will come out against UMNO, but that's okay.
Thank you, James, for speaking with us on the show today. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Professor James Chin from University of Tasmania in Australia there, wrapping up this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.